We're back on Upstream talking with Dr. Andrew Spencer about his book, Hope for God's Creation, Stewardship in an Age of Futility. Andrew, you say that there are 4 questions central to every discussion about the environment. What are those 4 questions, and why are they so central in this whole debate discussion?
So the 4 key questions that everybody has to answer, whether they're approaching it from a Christian perspective or whether they're approaching it from any other worldview, are what is your source of moral authority? The second one is why does creation or nature have any value at all? The third one is, what is the role of humanity within nature or the environment? And then the last one is, what is the end point for this world? So each one of those questions, those rise from all these environmental texts, whether it's secular texts, pagan texts, Christian texts. These are points where the value system and the framework of whatever somebody wants to do for an environmental ethics begin. And so as I spent years reading through the literature, I just noticed everybody has to answer these questions. And so instead of beginning our conversations about the environment with data about climate change or policies related to energy or things that even if you had a similar value system, you might have a different understanding of political theology or an approach to governance that would shape the way you would be able to navigate those questions. If we begin at the points where there's real difference, then that allows us to frame the upstream discussion in a way that's healthier and more robust. It also allows us to go back to our first principles and present Christianity in a unique and clear way.
I see what you did there, by the way. Checks in the mail. Let's start with sources of authority here, because this is obviously foundational in so many ways. And as we're talking about having a conversation that's not necessarily just a clash with those who are concerned about the environment, what are our sources of authority? What are their sources of authority? And what's the common ground and the conflict there?
So as Christians, of course, our ultimate source of authority is Scripture. So everything we do must be in accordance with and not contrary to what we have from God in Scripture and special revelation. So that's our guiding light. Now, the thing is, Scripture doesn't give us details about, should we have asbestos in our insulation, or, should we do nuclear power? It doesn't. It wasn't written for that purpose. It wasn't written to be an auto manual either, right? And so we look at scientific data as best we can, right? Recognizing that, data it's not perfect. Science is changing. It's gonna evolve over time. We're gonna find out new things. We're gonna find out new methods. And so that's a source of authority. Experience is a source of authority as well, diminished underneath those things, but it's just part of it. And then tradition as well, as we look at the way that Spirit-filled Christians for 2,000 years have sought to live out holy lives. We can read back into Luther and Calvin and Augustine and see how they handled some of these questions, somewhat different questions, but similar ones nonetheless, and then wrestle with those things. That's the Wesleyan quadrilateral is what it's often called, those 4 points. We can begin with those, recognizing, of course, the supremacy of Scripture and the sufficiency of Scripture. But at the same time, that gives us ways to interact with people. Now, what happens when environmentalism in a Christian context, let's say in a kind of a progressive or liberal Christianity, gets out of whack is that they can sometimes put science as the ultimate authority and then use Scripture as a way to kind of find themes. There's a whole movement called eco-theology, which is a liberation theology approach, which is trying to redeem and restore the earth's oppressed voice into the conversation of theology. And so they take, the assumption desecration and humans should have a very limited place in the created order as their starting point, and then they'll reread and retranslate and reconfigure texts of Scripture, ignoring pieces and highlighting other pieces that will support their idea. And so, that's the thing we got to be careful of, because it's very tempting to make Scripture fit what we want for a narrative.